Nice and caring capybaras, an incredible mother cat, a lioness that violates the pride's laws, an eagle that decided to wash away guilt, and much more. In this episode, you'll learn what happens when animals look after someone else's cubs. Labrador Birdie. Cats and dogs are something like black and white, Batman and Joker, good and bad. At least this is what many people think and are afraid of getting cats when there's a dog at home. But I'm in a hurry to mention that it's not the case. In reality, dogs and cats get on well with each other, and moreover, the adults can adopt them, take the youngest under their wing, and become a full-fledged mother or father. For example, in this story that happened in Great Britain, the nurse, named Rachel, brought 7 orphaned kittens. She found them on the roadside, and her kind heart didn't allow it to pass by. The girl was thinking about what to do with them and was worried that her favorite Labrador, Birdie, wouldn't accept them, would attack them, and so on. However, the way the dog reacted to this made Rachel cry, in the best sense of the word. The dog treated the kittens with highest respect and compassion. Relying on the nurse's words, the dog took them almost at once, started to warm them up, and look after them. As a result, the Labrador played with the kittens almost continuously for more than 8 weeks, slept with them, and followed them to prevent the small creatures from climbing somewhere or hurting themselves. Either the dog felt he was a father or just decided to help its hostess that also fed them with a bottle and taught them how to use the cat litter box. If you hope that at the end of the day the woman decided to keep the kittens, you're wrong. It was too much for a nurse to have such a number of pets, especially if you take into account the fact that she often has to work a night shift. That's why she just brought up the kittens and then brought them to one of the main shelters of her town, which helped to find a good and decent family for each kitten shortly after that. You know, when I look at the next nice story with animals, it seems to me that cats are unique creatures that can form a family among any animal. Let them be dogs and even capybaras. Amid the pandemics, a stray red cat accidentally found its way to the Malaysian National Zoo of Negara and started to live with capybaras. It's curious that workers noticed this, not at once. However, when they paid attention to that, it was already too late to separate them. The cat, Owen, is currently a full-fledged member of their family. You know, this story has a lot of advantages. Firstly, the stray cat found a shelter. Secondly, the park found new visitors, and each of them wished to personally take a look at this unusual family. Capybaras and the cat. Nature is capable of anything. By the way, do you want a couple fun facts about this rodent? Secondly, these are creatures that never live alone. Specialists consider that this is exactly the factor why they sheltered the kitten so easily. Let the cat alone, they would even make a feathered creature to their family member. After all, capybaras are not against the birds sitting on them, though it's quite possible that they're simply sly and clever creatures. If you didn't know, insects often hide in their fur, whereas birds feed on them with pleasure. Thus, the former become cleaner, whereas the latter, in their turn, satisfy themselves. So it's a win-win situation. In fact, capybaras don't worry about anything. They're not especially angry about that. All they need is a friend at hand and 6 to 8 pounds of fresh grass or hay on a daily basis. At some point, I started to think that stories will be monotonous. The stronger animals will look after the smaller and weaker. Not at all. The next story simply shocked me. The very common hen dared take playful and unruly puppies into its care. Still, it's said not in vain that there are no someone else's cubs. Maternal instincts are so strong that they make even a hen to care for alien offspring. This case took place on a Brazilian farm. We don't know the story of how the puppies found themselves under the hen's control. That's why I suggest that you write your versions in the comments. What's more, I find it interesting whether the puppies stay close to the hen and guard her after growing up several times bigger than their mother. Or will they go away to live separately? To get acquainted with the next touching story, we have to move to England with a girl named Becky Popham who bought 3 lambs from one of the farmers. They remained orphans after the mother's death for health reasons. At that moment, the lambs were only 4 weeks old. The farmer had neither strength nor time to take care of them, That's why their fortune was under threat. It was only the kind heart of Becky that saved them from a tragic future. They moved to a new house and quickly got acquainted with Heidi. No, this was not Becky's daughter and not even her friend, but a kind and loyal pony, living with Becky for 10 years. When the owner brought the lambs, she settled them in the neighboring stall with the pony. Later on, the woman noticed that the horse cared for the lambs and decided to transfer them to its stall. This was a little risky action. You never know how the lambs could react to an adult horse and backwards. However, everything worked out. These four not only got along, but turned into a real family. Pony showed itself as a careful mother, whereas they as obedient and nice cubs. Upon the expiration of several weeks, the horse started to produce milk. According to what the veterinarian said, it was a natural reaction of its body to the presence of the cubs. However, people were mostly surprised by the fact that the horse and the lambs found common ground. These cases are almost impossible in nature. White-tailed eagle. White-tailed eagles are proud feathered creatures. Those are constant lovers we're going to talk about. These are creatures that choose a partner and always stay true to him or her until their dying day. They build a nest somewhere high where nobody will find them. They regularly trim their home, adding new, fresh sticks and sealing it. They regularly trim their home, adding new, fresh sticks and sealing it with moss. The female clutches, whereas the male hunts, finds food, and brings it to his loved one. This is how the couple of Milda and Ramus lived until something incredible took place in their life. One terrible day, intruders attacked their nest. Those were another couple that seemingly planned to settle in someone else's nest. They would easily throw eggs from the height and wouldn't worry about a thing. However, the white-tailed eagles didn't allow them to do that. The mother continued sitting on the brood and keeping away the enemies, whereas the father of the family, Ramus, did everything to protect Milda from the unexpected guests. At some point, they managed to chase away the latter, and Ramus followed them. Finally, happiness and quietness seemed to be back, but that's not the case. It's too early to triumph. The time passed, but Ramus didn't return. He did neither in the evening of that day, nor the next morning, nor even several days later. However, that cannot be said for the intruders. Another female, distressed by the misfortune, also ran away, whereas the male did obviously have other plans. He flew around the nest, irritated Milda, bothering her and making her shuffle on eggs. The problem lay in the fact that the kind and courageous Ramus used to bring food, but then he was not there, as well as the subsistence. The female was hungry but continued sitting. However, at a certain point, she ran out of patience, failed, and went hunting. She was absent for several hours, but all scientists keeping a close eye on this story were surprised by what happened next. The intruder male approached the nest and decided not to do harm to the chicks, as if he had been conscious of his guilt and didn't allow himself to damage the clutch. Milda started to disappear more frequently, whereas the male tried to expiate his guilt. He brought sticks or branches to the nest, secured the roost, and when the female went hunting, he sat on the eggs and hatched them when the mother was out. Our next story happened to an ordinary worker of a flower shop in Australia. One day, a man encountered a stray dog outdoors and couldn't allow himself to pass by. He took it home, gave it food and drink, and started to look after it as his own child. As a result, they became best friends. Several years passed and the story repeated. However, this time a worker of the flower shop encountered not a dog but 8 piglets. I'm sure it would be an excess for the majority, 8 animals at once, and what's more, piglets that are not so easy to look after. Many people would have passed by and refused this idea. Many, but not him. This man with a capital letter took them to his farm, whereas his loyal dog, remembering the way the man had treated her, decided to thank him and help raise the piglets. Treasure, this is the name of the dog, arose its maternal instinct and started to care for them as sensitively and scrupulously as if they'd been her own pups. Soon after that, her body even started to produce milk, which enabled her to feed the piglets. That became even happier. Here's another, not less touching moment that happened to a lioness. Lions are surprising and incredibly strong animals. Anyone would envy their socialization level and the ability to work in a team. Apart from their hunting features, they're also famous for paying special attention to their cubs. Before labor, a female isolates herself from the family to avoid disturbance and gives birth to her nice cub. She feeds it, and when the animal becomes older, she goes hunting with it and shows the way one should fight as exemplified by an easy prey. They say the lionesses strike almost a lethal blow to the enemy and let her cub finish it off. This way, a female learns practically how to hunt. However, this story is not about the relationship between a lioness and her own cub. It's a small leopard that became its small one. This couple was accidentally noticed by tourists of the sanctuary in Tanzania and took several pictures. This phenomenon is especially unique and doesn't look like those in the previous stories, at least because it's happening in the wild, and where everybody is ready for a trick and fights to the death. Concerning someone else's cub, the lionesses take them as their enemies and get rid of them, even despite the difference in age and power. However, this case kept the leopard alive. Fate did it a favor and got him in touch with a caring mother ready to look after even someone else's cub. According to the park workers that track all the inhabitants moving around the park with the aid of GPS, the lioness found the small leopard about half a mile away from its own den. As experts in lions note, it's the high level of maternal hormones that played the role. She was driven by the desire to take care of a cub. After all, the lionesses are wonderful defenders. This is exactly why she didn't attack, but took it under her wing. We don't know yet how long the lioness will be caring for the cub. In addition, a year or a year and a half later, the small leopard will become more independent and is most likely to behave as others of its species do. A couple of griffin vultures. In the Amsterdam Zoo, where a huge number of different creatures live, you can encounter a couple of vultures, in other words gyps, that have been staying there for a long time. Gyps is a genus of big predatory birds from the family of Accipitridae, widely spread in the warm climate of the Eastern Hemisphere. Anyway, 2 vultures live there. Both are males. Females haven't been brought there. Despite that, there's a chick's egg left on the territory of the park. First, they took it to the incubator, but very soon one of the workers came up with an idea. What if we give this egg to the real feathered creatures of the same species? They hesitated, of course. By any measure, those are 2 males. They were not used to sitting on eggs. Anyway, the workers risked, and their risk was fully justified. Weirdly, the couple of vultures turned out to be a very kind and careful family that guarded this egg like the apple of their eye. Soon after that, a chick came into the world. The vultures didn't abandon it. They took turns in feeding the chick, regurgitating it half-digested as it's appropriate for exemplary vulture fathers. Do you remember a story of how a dog took kittens under her wing? Thus, cats prove that they're also capable of such kind and positive actions. The puppy Charlie, this is how it's called, it was discovered outdoors and immediately brought to the shelter. The poor dog needed emergency assistance. The story seems to be finished. A veterinarian took care of the puppy, but it's not the case. His life was still under threat. At that moment, it was only a couple of weeks old, but street life led it to get several infections that were hardly possible to cure. The veterinarians did everything to save Charlie. It seemed to be about to recover, but it was very difficult to find that key to success, when suddenly one of the kind girls dared take the puppy home. As you understand, she was not out of pocket. She fed the puppy from a bottle and made every effort to help, and finally succeeded in doing so. Her kind heart broke down, and the heroine adopted a mother cat with 6 newborn kittens. For the sake of the experiment, she decided to get them in touch with her puppy. It's a wonder she managed to do so. From the very beginning, the cat started to lick the puppy as its own cub and took him under her wing. The 4-legged recovered and continued to have a good time in the company of its new full-fledged family. A family reunion is always touching and exciting. Later, I'll show you moments with animals meeting their cubs they haven't seen for a long time. Being a father is not easy. This footage was taken at the San Diego Zoo in the United States. It's one of the most frequently visited zoos, More than 4 million people pass through it every year. Therefore, the owners of this place could not miss the opportunity to please their guests with an unusual performance. They brought a female lion with its cubs into one enclosure and then placed the father in the same enclosure. Usually a male lion doesn't take care of its cubs. It's more interested in hunting and defense of the pride members and territory, so all the initial upbringing falls on the shoulders of the female. However, here it was a little different. The cubs immediately wanted to hug their dad, touch it, cuddle it, but the head of the family was a little against it. Why a little? Because it had to get used to these mischievous little cats. It was the first time it had ever seen them, even though they were descended from it. I think that after a day or two in such an environment, the lion cubs will live in friendship and idle with their father, and it'll teach them all kinds of tricks and so on. Panda reunion. The birth of twins in the animal world, and in the human world as well, is quite a rare phenomenon, let alone triplets in the world of large animals. A mother panda named Zhu Zhao once gave birth to triplets, but the babies were quickly separated from their mother, and they didn't see each other for a long time. Despite this, time put things right, and here's a video of the cubs and their mother reuniting. At first, the keepers left the panda with only one cub, as they were sure that she couldn't cope with 3 at once. Over time, however, they came to the conclusion that the animal could cope with her 2 cubs. And only 2 weeks later, the experts realized that the panda can take care of all 3 cubs. It's very touching to watch the whole thing. One of the cubs is nervous and afraid to approach. The mother notices this and, like a human, goes to it, hugs it, calms it down, and no one worries anymore. Loving mom. And since I started comparing animal behavior with that of humans, let's take a look at how the orangutan reacted to its own baby. These primates are very close to humans on a genetic level. By nature, they're quite even-tempered and calm animals that do not attack first. The way they take care of babies in the wild is different from their life under human supervision. Because of this, vets have to take their babies away for a while after they're born to check on their health. But don't jump to conclusions. Humans are not some kinds of fiends. No one was going to leave a mom without its own baby for a long time. What's more, people make sure that justice is always served. The female you're looking at now had its baby stolen right after it gave birth. Not by humans, but by one of the dominant males. There was nothing it could do about it, so it had to live with it. However, humans weren't willing to do that. They took the baby from the male and returned it to its mother. This incredibly cute moment definitely is worth your attention and appreciation in the comments. Just look at how carefully it takes this baby in its hands. That's sheer emotion. Leopards. However, people help in reuniting families, not only in artificial environment, but also in a real wild one. For example, during one expedition to India, researchers encountered a small leopard there. It was alone, but fortunately unharmed. However, one thing was certain, its mother had lost it. In an effort to restore justice and reunite the family, they placed the cub in a plastic and transparent container. They put a rock on top of it so that the leopard wouldn't run away. Then they put cameras all around and went to wait. Spoiler alert, they didn't have to wait long. The very next night, a mother came running in and pulled its son out of the plastic confinement. The mother sniffed it, licked it, and then took it by the neck and carried it home as gently as possible. The care with which the leopard mother carried its cub is a separate kind of art. That's all she needs. The dog you see here is named Cora. She was found on the street by passers-by and was immediately taken to the vets. They didn't know whether she was hungry or needed some kind of additional examination. Doctors fed Cora and gave her some water, but only during the examination something was found. The reason for her depressed mood and unwillingness to do anything was discovered. Shortly before that, the dog got offspring, and the puppies were nowhere to be found, as you can see. This story received a wide response, and people from all over the city took up the search. There were many volunteers, and it was the general volunteer spirit that bore fruit. The puppies were found safe and sound and immediately taken to their mother, who in turn was over the moon with happiness. The story of the chimpanzee. To see another touching story, we have to teleport to the state of Kansas. The main role is played by a chimpanzee named Mahale, who gave birth to her first baby. However, with the firstborn came the first problems that she didn't expect. Vets had to take it away from her mother because the baby had low oxygen levels. It wasn't until 2 days later that they were able to be reunited, and this is what it looked like. The video began with a moment showing Mahale sitting off to the side while the baby, wrapped in a blue blanket, lay all alone. The chimpanzee didn't know how she should approach the baby. She knew it was her baby, but her hands kinda went numb. However, as soon as the baby itself reached out to its mother, the protective instinct was instantly awakened in her, and she immediately took it under her caring wing. Despite this, Mahale's nervousness was still evident. When she hugged the baby, she swayed. But the first and most terrible step had already been taken. Everything will be easier and more intuitive after that. After all, it was clear to everyone around. The chimpanzee is very relieved and happy to see her baby alive. Cute baby goat. Residents of the United States have shared another incredibly touching story that happened to them absolutely spontaneously. A group of friends were walking around their country estate and heard strange sounds. They were coming from a pit and no one could even imagine what or who was making them. Coming closer, people gasped in surprise. There was a tiny baby goat that had gotten stuck and fallen behind its family. The kind people helped it out, realizing that it would be lost alone, took it with them. They brought it home, bathed it, fed it, gave it some water, and called a vet who gave it a full examination. And when they were sure it was fine, the search for the family began. All the neighbors of the guys were involved in the process. Everyone wanted to do a good deed for this baby goat. In the end, people's wishes were fulfilled because its family was found. The joy and relief with which the baby rushed to meet them deserves special attention. Brotherly bond. Fire is a terrible phenomenon that unfortunately cannot be avoided. It's terrible not only from an ecological point of view, but also from a family point of view. During one of these large fires, a family of bears was separated. The bear brothers were in different locations and had to survive separately because of the fire. Luckily, people were in control of the situation and caught both bear cubs. They noticed that they were both about the same age. After analyzing them, people found out that the cubs were siblings, and it'd be wrong not to reunite them. The humans thought long and hard about how best to do this. First, they let them get used to their new home. Then they fed them and gave them some water, and only then did they make a small hole between the rooms, the hole through which one could visit the other. When this happened, the people behind the camera froze. Breathing stopped until the bears' noses collided. Then they began to play. Yeah, that's what they did. Even though it looks a little aggressive, that's the bear style. They're trying to feel each other out. According to experts, the bears themselves realized that they were brothers from the first seconds. That's why there was no question of any further danger. Red panda. And in this video, there is a family reunion of red pandas. These creatures are so cute that even their fights seem kind and funny. By the way, did you know that red panda is the only member of the Aluridae family? The classic black and white giant panda belongs to the bear's family because of its size and a number of habits. But don't think that if the red panda is so small, it can't do anything. Yes, its body length is usually about 20 to 24 inches, and it weighs no more than 13 pounds, but it is very cunning, agile, and stealthy. Despite its short legs, thanks to its semi-retractable claws, like a cat, the animal deftly climbs the local mountains and trees. And in order to stealthily climb thin stems and branches, the animal has a sixth finger in the form of a special wrist bone on its front legs. If you didn't believe that this handsome beast can hide perfectly, then you should know that the Chinese living next to it knew about the red panda only in the 13th century. Europeans knew about it 6 centuries later. The long-awaited meeting. Pregnancy in animals is just as amazing as it is in people. Park employees look forward to it, and the delivery of a gorilla mom from San Diego was no exception. However, Imani's pregnancy, that was the female gorilla's name, had some complications that made a C-section the only life-saving option. Imani's health was not threatened, but the baby was born weak, so it was taken away from its mother and placed in a special box. It was returned only when it had fully regained its strength. The workers were worried about whether the mother would take the baby back, but there was no other option in her mind. She grabbed it with both hands, held it close to her, and never wanted to let it go again. Have you ever wondered how hedgehogs are born? Next, I'll show you the most incredible and unusual animal births. Hedgehog. Let's start with the main animal of this episode. The first thing that interests people is how do hedgehogs mate at all? Don't sharp quills make it uncomfortable? Actually, they don't at all. Usually, the female lies down on its belly, presses the quills against its body, and the male gently gets to the female, does its thing, and leaves. This all lasts for a short time, so no one has time to get pricked. In about 40 to 50 days, a baby hedgehog is born. To be more exact, a few at a time. As a rule, there are about 4 to 5 hoglets in a litter. The female assumes an unnatural position and begins to push. Sometimes it seems as if the female is giving birth through the center of its belly. Hoglets are born white-pink, blind, and most importantly, without those very quills, so they can't injure their mother. It's only a few hours later that they develop white and dark soft quills, and the baby does not fully harden until a couple of weeks later. For about another month, the mother feeds it with milk, after which the little prickly animal becomes independent. 1 year after birth, the hedgehog, which until recently was tiny and harmless, becomes an adult and is ready to mate. Zebra shark. The zebra shark is an amazing creature. First of all, it has a very unusual color. It's spotted. It's not clear why, in this case, it's called the zebra shark and not, for example, the leopard shark. Secondly, the shark itself, in general, looks a bit different from the usual sharks. But the most important thing is its giving birth process, and especially mating. The fact is that the zebra shark sometimes doesn't even need a male to give birth. It can do everything on its own. Sharks of this species are characterized by parthenogenesis, a form of sexual reproduction in which the development of the organism occurs only from the female germ cell, carrying a double set of chromosomes. Usually, this feature is distinguished by zebra sharks, which have not previously had sexual contact with males. In any case, the babies emerge from the eggs. The eggs of the zebra shark are very unusual. See for yourself. They look like some containers, bags, oysters, and bottles at the same time. In general, whatever you see. Babies hatch themselves, or people can help them, since zebra sharks are often bred at various farms, research centers, and oceanariums. Cichlids. Some animals may give birth alone, while others carry their babies in an unusual place. The latter include cichlids. Mostly, cichlids refer to African cichlids that live in the African Great Lakes. There are over 3,000 species of them, and most of them incubate their eggs in their mouths. This can be done by one parent or both. In fact, cichlids usually place the already born fry in their mouths. Initially, they're in a dug hole or other secluded place, but if they need to be moved somewhere, or an adult fish needs to swim with them, then it puts the babies in the mouth and moves with them. Thus, cichlids not only protect the fry and transport them, but also carry the offspring until the young grow up and can take care of themselves. Sometimes you can hear that women should give birth in water. One can argue with that. Even many scientists don't think it's the right decision to make, but we won't get into an argument. All I will say is that the next animal in the episode is convinced that water birth is the right thing to do. I'm talking about the hippo. Although these animals are terrestrial, they lead a semi-aquatic lifestyle and spend a lot of their time in their favorite bodies of water. So it's logical that their birth takes place there. And it's okay if it takes place at the zoo. Hippos are safe there. But in the wild, females often have to give birth in extreme conditions. For example, not far from crocodiles that sometimes attack hippo calves. Occasionally, however, hippos also give birth on land. But before that, a female builds a semblance of a nest from the trampled grass and bushes. It's something like a ward in the maternity hospital for the female. Due to the huge size of these creatures, only one calf is always born. If the birth takes place in the water, the female must not relax after giving birth. It needs to push the calf quickly to the surface so that the baby can take its first breath. Adult hippos can stay underwater for 5 or even 10 minutes, but calves cannot hold their breath for more than 40 seconds and can drown. Knobbed hornbill. If everyone has heard of hippos, many have probably just heard of this creature for the first time. You should know that they're birds of the hornbill bird family. Knobbed hornbills may not be as famous as hippos, but they're no less interesting. First, check out how beautiful they are. Yellow beak, white and black feathers, black and dark blue skin, and other colorful details. All this cannot help but attract attention. Secondly, knobbed hornbills are noted for their incredible care for their chicks. In fact, the birth of these birds is quite ordinary, a standard clutch and quite standard eggs from which cute chicks hatch. Much more interesting is how females protect their chicks. To protect them from predators as much as possible, the female lays eggs in narrow hollows in trees, and then it gets inside and kinda walls itself up. In the hollow, the female waits for the chicks to hatch, and the only way for it to get food is to wait for the male. The male toils and, one might say, works as a courier, delivering orders directly to the hollow. It passes food through its beak and provides food for the female and its chicks. To tell the truth, courier service of these birds is not so good. Sometimes it happens that the female has to wait for the male for a very long time. In addition, it doesn't always bring the best and most suitable food. Platypus. The platypus birth can be called incredible and strange because this animal is strange in almost everything. First of all, it's a mammal, but at the same time the platypus is venomous, which is not very characteristic of mammals. The platypus venom is located on the crural gland. Toxins are produced during the mating season. The venom comes out through the spurs on the platypus's hind legs and is capable of killing a small animal. For humans, the venom is not fatal, but it is very painful. Second, the platypus has electroreception. That is, it senses electric fields like some electric eel. And third, the platypus lays eggs. The only mammals that do the same are echidnas. Platypus eggs are similar to reptile eggs. They're round, small, and covered with a dirty white shell. The platypus lays eggs in a burrow, with the female guarding and incubating them most of the time. Baby platypuses are born about 10 days after laying eggs. They're real cuties. These babies are no more than an inch long when they're born naked and blind. The mother urgently starts feeding baby platypuses with milk, which comes out through its pores on its belly, because platypuses have no nipples. This is yet another oddity of these animals. Armadillos are no less interesting creatures than platypuses. They have an unusual appearance, the main feature of which is an epic shell, a funny body, the ability to run fast, and they can also curl up into a ball in case of danger, thus protecting their head and vulnerable body parts. Armadillo pregnancy is both a common and unique phenomenon. The fact is that it's impossible to tell exactly how long it'll last. Some armadillos give birth in a few weeks, some give birth in a few months, and some give birth even in a few years. This is because armadillos can delay their pregnancy. In urgent and stressful situations, armadillos delay embryo implantation and wait for more favorable conditions. In this way, the animal gives its offspring a better chance of survival. In addition, armadillos are characterized by polyembryony, meaning they produce several twins that develop from the same egg, and as a result are born of the same sex. In other words, if a male armadillo is born, it does not have to wait for sisters, only brothers will be born in the litter. Porcupine. Once again, we have the well-known prickly animals. Only porcupine quills are much longer and sometimes sharper than those of hedgehogs. In some porcupine species, the spines on the back can reach 16 inches in length and 0.2 inches in diameter. Even large predators like leopards and lions are not always able to deal with the porcupine and constantly prick themselves trying to defeat it. But among porcupines themselves, these spines do not disturb anyone. This also applies to mating. Everything here is about as in the case with the hedgehogs. The female does everything so as to not interfere with the male, and the latter, in its turn, performs the process carefully and quickly. Pregnancy lasts from 3 to 4 months, depending on the species, and then little animals are born. They do not traumatize their mother, just like hedgehogs. Initially, they have only a very soft hair cover, and it's from this that spines are formed. The formation takes place quickly, and in a week, the baby can prick anyone. Porcupines in general are developing rapidly. For example, African crested porcupines feed their babies for only a couple of weeks. On the other hand, a lot of time should pass before full-fledged adulthood. Puberty comes in about a couple of years. Greater sage grouse. I'm sure many of you have never heard of this unusual feathered creature before, and in fact, you lost a lot. It's very beautiful and amazing. Just look at their mating process. Although it occurs in the spring, they begin to think about it at the end of winter. Males gather in a separate group, occupy a specific area next to the females, and begin to walk in a circle uninterrupted. During their sprawling and extravagant walk, they inflate their gular sacs on the neck and empty them again with rolling and explosive sounds. This is exactly the phenomenon in nature that's worth seeing at least once in your life in person. The most successful males get first access to the females, which choose them in the spring. The fertilization process takes place in a classic fast way. As soon as it's done, a male immediately lives for its business and never sees the female of the opposite sex, which is carrying its babies, again. And that's a pity, because the female usually lays about 8 eggs. What differs from the greater sage grouse for the better is the albatross. These creatures are monogamous, that is, they remain faithful to one partner for the rest of their lives. Moreover, they don't choose their partner by chance at all. It takes years for them. They choose someone that will understand them in the literal and figurative sense. Each couple of albatrosses forms their own unique gestures and symbols with which they can communicate with each other. And when the couple is formed, it ceases to perform a mating ritual. That is, the males no longer call the females with special cries. So albatrosses use mating ritual only for making a couple and not for mating in principle. As to the ritual itself, it's reduced to taking care of feathers and themselves and their partner, turning their heads, tilting them back, cackling loudly, flapping their outstretched wings, snapping their beak, and grabbing the partner's beak, which is something like kissing among albatross. Even when they have a chick, the parents, like responsible adults, take turns breeding it. While one of them sleeps on the nest, the other hunts and searches for food. Tarantula Deadly Dance. This male has been preparing for puberty for many years. It's achieved what it was going for, but has not yet been able to find a female. The male must hurry because in just a few months, it may be finished. A higher power heard its prayers, and it found the female's traces. Smelling its pheromones, the male arrived at the den and lured it away with special rhythmic hits on the ground. The female reciprocated it, but this doesn't yet mean its intention to mate. Everything will be decided by a face-to-face meeting. If the tarantula is not a suitable candidate, the female will eat it. Having made up its mind to do such a courageous act, the male slowly but confidently begs the female. It strokes it and soothes it. At some point, the female relaxes completely, and the tarantula impregnates it. After that, the female freezes, and it will stay in this position for the next few minutes. During this time, the male needs to get away from it as soon as possible. Now you'll meet really giant pets, born once in 100 years. Mini pig. Two Canadians led ordinary, simple lives. They loved pets, so they took care of several beauties at once. 2 cats, a tortoise, and a fish were under their care. One of their friends suggested that they take in another animal, a miniature pig, which would be about as tiny as all their other pets. The guys agreed without thinking twice, but they had no idea that this miniature pig would grow to be the size of a full-fledged guard dog. At the time of taking this footage, the pig weighed about 660 pounds. A large number of people watched its life and wondered how this was even possible. After all, its owners did absolutely nothing to make it grow so large. The mini pig got a lot of fans because one of the guys created an account in a social network for it. There were also a lot of people who wanted to buy this animal, but for the family members, the pig had already become their relative, so there could be no question of any amount of money. It was personal. What do you think could have affected such a crazy growth of the animal? After all, even the vets who examined it didn't predict such records. I don't know about you, but I personally have a fear of large dogs. Big, toothy, aggressive-looking ones. If you want to know, pit bulls are at the top of the list. And I'm talking about the regular breed. Now imagine my face if I encountered this big creature. Well, ordinary adult males of this breed weigh up to 44 to 66 pounds. This animal is fattened up to 176 pounds. You'd think this is some kind of mutant, but no. We see the most ordinary dog who, by the way, continues to grow. The dog was expectedly named Hulk because just the sight of him makes the blood run cold in everyone's veins. But despite this, the owner of the pit bull trusts him with his little son. The dog loves to play with children and even rides them on his back. All because of the fact that Hulk was trained from puppyhood and grew up to be a full-fledged guard dog. According to the owner, he's so loyal that he'll protect the family at the cost of his own life. They thank him for it in full. Every day, they give him 4.5 pounds of ground beef. In general, he eats better than many people. However, in this case, the size is no longer a benefit, and the owners are rather worried about the dog. According to the vets, because of such large size, the dog may at some point become difficult to breathe or even perform basic exercises. And since pit bulls can't live without movement, this can end very badly. Abnormal crocodile. The thing that animals can live longer in captivity than if they were not tamed is a fact long known to scientists, but people are still amazed by some individuals. One of them is the crocodile named Cassius. The age of the reptile is more than 110 years, his length is 18 feet, and he weighs about a ton. In 2011, Cassius the crocodile was recognized by the Guinness Book of Records as the world's largest crocodile in captivity. Besides, today he's considered one of the oldest crocodiles in the world. This giant was caught back in 1984. Lately, he's been living in an Australian park. What else makes Cassius so extraordinary is that he continues to grow despite his age. That's just phenomenal. Lizzie. That's the name of this beautiful Great Dane you're seeing right now. The black and white beauty was special from the moment she was born. According to her owner, when Lizzie first came into the world, she had a strange, powerful energy. After her first vet check, the doctor said Lizzie would be a big girl, but they must have understated it a bit, or used the wrong word. After all, Lizzie has grown up to be a giant dog. She's considered one of the tallest female dogs in the world right now. Her owner says she was abnormally tall already at the age of 2. The giant dog is so big that she has to eat food from a bowl that stands on a special chair. The good news is that Lizzie is not very active. You know how it usually happens. Dogs run all over the apartment and accidentally can break or push something. And with Lizzie's size, anything can be knocked over and broken. Samson. A man named Jonathan led an ordinary life, but one day something happened. His older brother asked him to babysit a little cat that had just recently been born from a cat he already had. Of course, Jonathan agreed, but he had no idea that at that moment something mysterious would forever link the cat to his life. The white and brown handsome male, named Samson, is about 1.5 times larger than the average Maine Coon. His veterinarian honestly admits he's never seen a cat this big. He's definitely the biggest cat in New York City. Yes, as you understand, the kitty stayed at Jonathan's place, and after a year he realized that it was not a simple 4-legged one, but one of the largest cats in the world. The owner of the pet quickly adapted to the situation and even created separate accounts and social networks for Samson. Many people want to watch the life of the cat, who's more than 3 feet long, weighing about 33 pounds. At the same time, the cat is clearly not going to stop at the achieved records. In an effort to gain a few extra pounds, he eats 6 cans of canned cat food every day and eats some dry food as a snack. Are you sure it's a rabbit? That's the question I asked myself as soon as I saw this video on the internet. It shows a man holding a giant rabbit that is clearly not a dog, pig, or goat. It's actually a rabbit of the Flemish giant rabbit breed, considered one of the largest in the world fauna. Flemish giant rabbits are distinguished by their large size and live weight. Adult rabbits weigh 15 pounds, some individuals weigh 22 to 26 pounds, and the record-breaking weight is 29 pounds. Their body length can reach 27.5 inches. Also, these rabbits are characterized by a deep and wide back. However, such size does not appear out of anywhere. Even if you have a rabbit of this breed, you should know that it needs special attention and care to keep it warm and cozy. In addition, large size requires more space, so most likely the classic rabbit houses won't do. You have to customize them. People have had problems with these rabbits for a long time. After all, it's believed that they appeared 3 to 4 centuries ago thanks to the crossbreeding between local rabbits and Patagonian rabbits. Both breeds have been extinct for a long time, so we'll not be able to check the truthfulness of the legends, but we can check the advantages of these giants. From each of these fluffy animals, one can get a large and luxurious skin, as well as 12 pounds of easily digestible meat. Turns out kangaroos can be this big. Hit the like button if you thought this animal was fake too. Seriously, I thought it was just some monument erected in honor of Australia's main animal, but this isn't the case. The creature moved, and for a moment, I felt uncomfortable. Not about my safety, of course, but about the safety of the girl behind the camera. Judging by the fact that there was no comment from her, the kangaroo didn't attack her, it just ran past about its business. Speaking of kangaroos, we all know that these creatures are carried in their mother's pouch. But did you know that when they're born, they're only a couple of centimeters long? They reach more or less noticeable size only after the first few months, after which they already become similar to their parents. Bully beaver. To be honest, I'm a little shocked by the following situation. A guy was walking his dog near some lake when suddenly, out of nowhere, a beaver appeared, jumped on the dog, and then disappeared into the water. And it'd be alright if the beaver was of classic size, but this one was obviously some kind of mutant or overgrown. Probably, as it was growing up, something changed in its head which made it more aggressive and persistent. In all likelihood, as the experts from the comments explained, the beaver was defending its territory, on which the guy and his dog walked without asking. In this case, I can understand the beaver. If I were the human, after this attack, I'd remain vigilant for at least another 20 minutes because that's how long beavers can stay underwater and watch the surroundings. Who knows, maybe the animal's mission on this attack wasn't over yet, and it was planning to go to a second round. By the way, beavers are helped by their very large lungs and liver to stay underwater for so long. In this individual, they're probably even larger than usual. Perhaps this giant can swim underwater for up to half an hour. And now let's talk about other giants that can be found in the most unexpected places. Next, you'll see some frightening giant snake moments caught on camera. Dog rescue. The story that happened to the protagonist of this video was completely accidental. The friends were riding their bikes and talking about their business when suddenly, out of the corner of their eye, they noticed something moving in the bushes. After a closer look, they realized it was not just a lurking animal, but a battle between a snake and a dog. Actually, one can hardly call it a battle because there was a complete domination by the creeping creature. Since a dog is a man's best friend, the guys stopped and helped the poor creature. They worked on the following principle. One filmed everything for the story and held the tail of the anaconda, while the others tried to untie the snake and free the dog from its fetters. You know, judging by the guys' efforts, loosening the grip was insanely difficult. Not only was the snake huge, but was also naturally very tenacious in its grip on its target. Fortunately, the operation was successful and the doggy was free. Another battle against the dog. Remember the first video of the cyclist helping a dog in trouble? Well, I don't know about you, but I got the distinct idea that it was almost impossible for the animal to get out of a snake's grip. If it was so hard for humans, how hard would it be for one little dog that was trapped? And yet, we're about to see it. This video was taken in eastern Sri Lanka. Tourists were walking around the island and happened to see a dog in trouble. Unfortunately, none of the people had any snake fighting skills, which made them afraid to attack it and intervene in any way. They could only watch and hope that a miracle would happen. At one point, it sort of happened. The dog got out, but it was too early to rejoice. The snake quickly followed it and gripped it again. This time it was much more dangerous since it started to strangle the dog. The man's best friend barked, twisted, tried to distract the snake, and at the same time inflict some damage on it. And you know what? It succeeded. At one point, the snake itself didn't realize how the dog deftly and quickly slipped out of its grip. Hit the like button for the awesome doggy escape. Why are you bothering me? That's what this snake must have thought to itself when the man was trying to pester it. The man needed something. He was definitely interested in something. Well, he couldn't just take a stick and start poking the snake with it, right? It wasn't mockery either. The pokes were accurate. He was not trying to hurt the reptile. In any case, it was impossible to know the real reason for this behavior without drastic measures. For example, without a high-speed lunge toward the man. Maybe during it he'll tell me why he's been bothering me, the snake thought, and gave the guy with the stick a good scare. I think that after such an incident, he would not bother the snake anymore. In the following video, the snake charmers encountered a new challenge in the form of a huge cobra that absolutely refused to make any compromises. The snake was crawling in a public park and perfectly blended in with the leaves, which made the danger big. Witnesses immediately called in snake catchers, who immediately went to work. Their task was to place the snake in this box here. To do this, they left a small hole there in which the creeping creature had to want to climb personally. However, so far it's in no hurry to do so. It frightens the main catcher with the box witness, his assistant, and the cameraman. Fortunately, it didn't take long and the creeping creature was caught. I can't imagine how it can be caught by an unprepared person or just one person. The risk of being bitten was just prohibitive. What I would also call prohibitive is the tension in the following video. The paradox is that there's no movement, everything is rather static. The python has caught the king cobra in its strangling vice and clearly has no intention of letting it go. Nevertheless, for some reason, until the very end, it seemed to me that the second snake was about to start moving, that its second wind would kick in and it'd fight back. But unfortunately, or fortunately, this didn't happen. Python came out of the fight as the undisputed winner. Backstory. I think I found the backstory of the battle between those two snakes. At least it looks very realistic and logical. In this clip, you can see the cobra crawling up to the python and plotting something. The interesting thing is that the python sees it but does nothing. It just doesn't give a damn about any tricks of its creeping relative. Literally 1 minute passes and the cobra lunges. It grabs the python's torso with its tenacious teeth, but for some reason, it immediately lets the opponent go. Either the skin turned out to be too thick, or the size didn't fit the cobra, or it just quickly changed its mind. It's likely that because of such ridiculous tricks, the python will get angry and then strangle the annoying snake. By the way, do you know snakes well? For example, do you know which snakes are the largest on the planet? Or what are they interesting for? And what are they capable of? If not, then keep watching to learn more and just look at cool, fascinating, and scary snake footage. Anaconda. Tell me, what episode about giant snakes can go without the anaconda? That's just impossible. There's a lot of different information about these snakes. Some say that they reach 20 feet in length, others claim to have seen larger individuals. For example, the length of the largest anacondas ever described in the literature is 59 and 79 feet. But no one has been able to confirm this, which means it could be fake. In any case, it's rather silly to argue with the fact that the anaconda is both the king and the monster of the snake world. This snake is so big that it has long preferred not to move on land. It's much easier for it to swim in the water and not make an effort while moving its body. Evolution's a good thing. It's helped the anaconda in this move under the water, giving it the proper eyes and nostrils at the top of its head so it can breathe and see while the rest of its body is underwater. This snake lives in the jungles of South America, being one of the creepiest creatures there. I think it's silly to speak about the danger for small or medium-sized creatures if we consider the fact that even jaguars are afraid of the anaconda. By the way, the anaconda went even further and started beating its own congeners so that others would be afraid of it. I'm talking about large females, which are happy to eat small snakes. Reticulated python. And this snake is the longest of the entire world's fauna. The largest individual in the wild can grow at least 20 to 23 feet in length and weigh about 220 pounds, sometimes even more. The reticulated python is native to Southeast Asia. It's a large and beautiful snake. The incredible striking net-like pattern on its skin is called reticulated, hence the name. Unfortunately, this beautiful skin is the cause of their misfortune, since it costs a lot of money in the commercial trade and on the black market. Despite this, it's impossible to call reticulated pythons an endangered species. Most likely, people are simply afraid to get close to such an enormous creature. Even the smell of money doesn't motivate them to risk their own health. Burmese python. Because of its beautiful pattern and relatively easy disposition, our next guest is the choice for people wishing to have a large snake as a pet. The only nuance to consider in this case is the size of the growing creeping creature. It can exceed 13 feet in length, and this will turn into a real phobia for some, so keep this in mind. What else is important to know about these pythons is that as babies, they're crazy about crawling up trees. However, childhood amusements and dreams take a backseat when the Burmese python begins to grow by leaps and bounds. Over time, the snake will need water, in which it'll feel like a fish. Representatives of this species are able to hold their breath for as much as 20 to 30 minutes. Fall asleep in a tent and wake up inside a giant anaconda. Would you like to experience something like that? Animal behavior, as well as what they eat, are sometimes really hard to predict. An alligator inside a python. I think that when people deal with a snake that tried to attack them or their territory, it's quite normal to expect that one or another inhabitant of the nearest places will be inside the snake. For example, some kind of bird, maybe a small rodent, well, or another snake, if we're talking about a king cobra. So, the authors of the following story engaged in a battle with a python from which they emerged victorious without difficulty. Why was the battle so easy? What was wrong with that snake? They barely moved, the men said, and they couldn't solve the mystery. That was until they decided to dissect the snake. turned out that in some fantastic way, it had been carrying a crocodile all this time, a real one, and not a tiny one at all. And now I'll tell you about a case that happened to Sean Brighton, a resident of the United States. This man was in love with wild nature. He could often be alone with himself and spend the night in tents or makeshift cabins. He was really surprised when one day he woke up outside his tent. He noticed that he was covered with a strange slime and that he had no shoes on. There were strange cuts on his arms as if from bites. After looking around a bit and thinking about it, he realized that some giant from the snake world had tried to attack him last night. Not only had it attacked, it had even swallowed Sean. And you ask the logical question, how in that case did he manage to get out? It's unreal. According to the man, only one of the predators could have helped him out. When big cats, for example, lions or tigers, encounter a snake, the creeping creature immediately understands the danger and spits out its prey and prepares to go away or take one last fight for its own life. Probably something similar happened in this story. Do you think it's impossible in reality and man made it up? Share your thoughts in the comments. Golfer fan. That's what I would call the snake from the following video, because it ate as many as 2 balls necessary for this wonderful game. Either the snake was playing on the golf course, or it ate balls at someone's house. In any case, the fact remains. Probably the snake mistook them for somebody's eggs and decided to feast on easy prey. Only these eggs turned out to be much more durable and were not going to be digested in its stomach at all. That's when the snake felt bad. Fortunately for it, there was a kind and skillful person nearby who promptly, and most importantly, accurately extracted all the balls from the snake. I think that if the creeping creature had been able to talk, it would have definitely told its rescuer to thank you. The authors of the next video were exploring the wild nature, looking for something to look at. Their pleas were heard and they came across a crocodile. The first thing that came to the tourist's mind was that the crocodile should be caught and used for their own gain. Of course, I don't approve of that. However, we're not interested in their commercial plan at all. Fact is that the travelers found 3 turtles inside the crocodile. The surprising thing is that 2 of them had no bite marks at all and moved quietly with their legs. Now, each of you will remember that crocodiles don't chew their prey before they swallow it. Look, learning new facts is certainly a good thing, except that I suggest we take it to the next level and find out who steals from us all the time. Well, I mean, often one can't find both socks. One goes missing somewhere. It's as if aliens are taking it away and erasing our memories so we'll never find them. At least that's what I used to think. But today the truth has been revealed, and I realize that pets may be to blame. For example, the US dog in this story ate 43 of her owner's socks. X-rays of her stomach look like it's full of smoke, but in reality, it's all nothing more than socks. Lots of socks. The owner of the Great Dane couldn't explain how so many socks got into her pet's stomach. The woman went to the vets after the dog hadn't eaten for days and was vomiting constantly. Fortunately for everyone, the surgery was quick, painless, and successful. Every last one of the socks was removed. We can only hope that the dog won't want to repeat the experiment. A shark inside a shark. We just saw the dog with socks. What could be more amazing? It turns out that there's such a thing. For example, here is the picture that a subscriber sent me. The guy claims he was fishing somewhere in the high seas, was pretty successful, small fish were biting, there were bigger catches, but then at one point something insanely big was biting. People prickled up their ears, harnessed their willpower, pulled the line, and pulled out a shark. Actually, not one, but 2 sharks. It turned out that it was the lower one, the one that was inside the other one, that took the bait. This is either some kind of mutant or the result of an unthinkable coincidence, or simply a fake and nothing more. Write in the comments, what do you think about this? Turtle Bank. Now I suggest we go to Bangkok and visit one of their national parks. One day, a local turtle had completely lost her appetite. She hardly moved around, didn't want to play with anyone. In general, she behaved in a completely unnatural way. The zoo workers, being the responsible guys they are, immediately discovered this problem and began checking on the turtle in every way possible. And now, imagine their face when they found as many as 915 coins of different denominations inside her, weighing a total of 11 pounds. The surgery to save the turtle, who thought she was some kind of bank, lasted for 7 hours, and the reptile was saved after all. No wonder the turtle was given the name Piggy Bank. According to vets, this was the first case they encountered in their medical practice. It's hard to imagine how the turtle could swallow so many coins. Besides, how could she find so many coins in the first place? I think it might have something to do with the zoo where the reptile lived. Tourists were constantly throwing coins into the water, and probably the turtle was quietly eating them. Piggy Bank, who suffered from her own greed, remained in the hospital for a week, after which she went back to the zoo. Nevertheless, it's impossible to call this story a good one. Soon the reptile still passed away due to intoxication, despite all the efforts of the vets. The next unusual incident took place in Australia, the home of all things unusual and obscure. A carpet python made its way into a residential building, slithered around it for a while, made sure that the owners were not in place, and began to do some crazy stuff. It began to eat a slipper that caught its eye. I can't even understand why the python found it delicious. It's just an ordinary slipper. With such an unusual object inside, the snake lived for several days. The owners didn't notice either the snake or the slipper. But one day, when they had guests, everything became clear. They were stunned when they saw the python with a slipper-like elongation inside its body. The reptile was immediately taken to a veterinary hospital in the suburbs. No matter how you look at it, the people needed the slipper. X-rays were taken, and afterwards, surgery was initiated to save the snake. Though it looked pretty difficult and incomprehensible, in fact, the surgery was easy and successful. The python was fine, it was unharmed, and it was doing fine a couple of days after the rescue. Has anyone seen my barbecue tongs? It was with these words that the story of the rescue of the python began, although at the time, people didn't yet understand it. Aaron Rouse had a pet snake. He loved it very much and never stinted it in food. However, that wasn't enough for the snake, and it decided to gobble up something unusual, barbecue tongs. Again, I have an important question. How did the snake even think of doing that? Barbecue tongs don't seem delicious at all. Anyway, one can't understand these creeping creatures. The python did what I told you and kept it a secret. It wasn't until a few hours later that the owner managed to notice barbecue tongs were missing. Aaron immediately went to a nearby animal rescue center and told the problem. According to one of the doctors, when he first heard the story, he didn't believe it to be true. The python looked too small, as if it couldn't physically swallow anything like that. Nevertheless, it was exactly as Aaron had told it. At first, the medical team was going to remove the barbecue tongs using endoscopy, but eventually, for fear of internal injuries, they removed the tongs during an abdominal surgery. Everything went well, and the owner of the snake promised to be more attentive to his pet in the future. I wonder if one of the snakes in the wild swallows some things, foreign object, which could be unrealistic to digest, it'll be doomed to death? Or do animals and Mother Nature have a scenario provided for such a case? Write in the comments if you know the answer to this question. Also, write in the comments, what find inside animals surprised you the most? Thank you for watching, and see you later.